The copper is now starting to rear its head, and particularly in the South Zone, where we're finding very high grade corridors. So we have probably anywhere between 500,000 to 1 million tons of high grade copper that we want to bring into the feasibility.
Welcome viewers to Assay TV. In this feature, we're catching up with Ascendant Resources, the Toronto-based company focusing on exploring and developing the Lagoa Salgada project in Portugal's prolific Iberian Pyrite Belt. And I'm pleased to be speaking with Mark Brennan, who's executive chairman and founder of the company. Welcome, Mark.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, Adam. Thanks.
Yeah, it's great to be catching up with you again. I think for viewers who might be new to Ascendant Resources, why don't we just recap what is the opportunity here with this fantastic resource that you've discovered in Europe?
Well, we believe we have a world-class deposit and a world-class property here that has kind of been hidden at the northwestern edge of the Pyrite Belt, largely because it was underground. Covered by about 150 meters of tertiary material. But what we're seeing right now is that the drilling has uncovered, probably on a meter per ton basis, more tonnage than any other property that we've seen on the belt. It looks extremely large, and we're seeing it very consistent results upon drilling. And so where we are now is we have about just under 30 million tons. We're building a feasibility that'll be completed probably at the end of April. And that feasibility will basically have an extremely high IRR. You may recall the PA that we did, where basically we showed an NPV of about 250 million and an IRR after tax of about, I think it was 55%. I think we're actually going to do better on the feasibility than we did in the PA, which is unusual. But again, we're just finding with this property, every time we drill, even if it's infill drilling, we're finding really, really nice surprises. And usually that's indicative of we're in a much bigger system than we know we have.
Fantastic. All right, let's roll on. Well, yeah, with the PFS in mind, what is the update there? Do you have some timelines around revised timelines about when we can expect?
Yeah, actually, we were targeting the end of March, and we've had some really good news. And we had in the South Zone, we're starting to find some very interesting copper. Traditionally, this has been really a polymetallic with less copper than most metals. I mean, the silver gold content is about 35% of the production, where we have zinc about 30, and then lead about 25, and the balance in copper. The copper is now starting to rear its head, and particularly in the South Zone, where we're finding very high grade corridors. So we have probably anywhere between 500,000 to 1 million tons of high grade copper that we want to bring into the feasibility. So we've delayed the feasibility by about a month, but that's a really good reason to do so.
Yeah, absolutely. If I'm right, this Pyrite Belt is historically copper rich. If you look at where it goes across Siberia.
Yeah.
Why does it have such interesting geology in terms of this mix of this metallurgy?
Well, the Pyrite Belt is the most prolific host of VMS deposits, volcanogenic massive sulfide deposits, which obviously contain polymetallics, copper, as you say, and zinc traditionally, and even tin in the past. But basically, it's a very unique area that's been produced for probably 2,000 years, and so from that regard it continues. But again, most mines or deposits have been found because they were at surface, and we've been underground. This deposit is about 130 meters underground, which really gave us the ability to go in there when nobody else was looking at it.
Yep. Excellent. Okay. Well, so do you have any update on the current drilling then that you've done?
Basically, we're kind of coming to the end of we embarked upon a 12,000 meter infill drilling program that included metallurgical testing. It included variability testing, drill hole testing, and so from that regard, we're pretty much finished. I think we've got results from one more assay that is in the South Zone, which has this high grade copper, and basically that'll be the cutoff. So I would expect that by the end of February that we'll have our resource completed. The mine plan is very much under has been pretty much planned. And as you may recall, basically we've got two deposits at Lagoa Salgada, with the North and the South Zone. We believe that they'll coalesce as one deposit. They're about 300 meters apart right now with a 1.7 kilometer strike. And what we're seeing is the North Zone is really a massive sulfide, where the South Zone is really copper stockwork. But again, we're now starting to find corridors of very, very rich copper. We have announced in the past about 600 meters of copper in the South corridor at the North Zone, but we're not going to include that in the feasibility, just because we don't have the time to put everything in. And I think what you'll find is from now on, we'll kind of go into a phase two, which could potentially include, our new step out drill that since we've had an option on the property, that we've actually gone and drilled outside of the North and South Zone. We have the North Zone, as I mentioned, is a massive sulfide. It's where probably 80% of the value of the project rests. That's where you see very high, very good grades of gold, silver, zinc, lead. And basically the step out that we've done, anomaly D, looks like it's going to be very similar. So again, that probably won't make it into the feasibility. It won't make it into the feasibility, but we'll use that as our phase two. In our phase two, which we expect to see, an expansion. Hopefully we can announce, the expansion before we actually, complete construction, on the first phase. So long story short, we'll have the feasibility completed by the end of April. We expect to have our permitting approved by November, and we expect to be in construction by January of 2024. So this time next year, we'll be battening down the hatches and building a mine.
Fantastic. That's all systems go, but it's great to see the strategy really coming together as you near construction in 2024 will come around quicker than we know. It's a lot of outlay though. You had an excellent capital raise last year with Sprott streaming. How are the financials going in terms of getting you through these milestones?
Well, the again, as I mentioned earlier, we had a PA with a 55% IRR after tax. I think this is going to be better. And so the feasibility, again, will give people a lot more comfort. We have a lot of development in terms of metallurgy, and the metallurgy is sorted out. It's fine. So I think we're going to, people will see the feasibility as having a lot more credibility than the PEA, as is common, right? But at the same point, it's going to be stronger. So when you're looking at a project with the 55% IRR, there's generally a lot of people who will fund you. It's a pretty good rate of return. And for example, our expectation is that in the first 5 years or so, we'll be generating about 150 million of cash flow. And I'll just remind you, our capital build here is $130 million. So the payback on this to a lender will probably be 2 or 3 years. So it's a very, very rapid payback to a lender, in terms of post-production. So from that regard, there's lots of latitude for a lender to have safety. And so we've been Sprott have expressed a strong interest to come in and provide capital as part of the project funding. We envisage that they'll be our partners on one side with others. And we've had expressions of interest from 2 to 3 different groups to come and fund us. So I think by the time we complete the feasibility at the end of April, and we start looking at the clearing process in the late third quarter, we'll have this project funded.
Yeah, excellent. And look, I wanted to just touch on Portugal as a jurisdiction and sort of how that plays into the positivity of getting funded. It's a known European jurisdiction that needs critical resources. If you think about the strategy within Europe, and it's supporting its industries as such. So that would perhaps put you as maybe not the poster child, but in the spotlight as such, which is good. Can you just talk about how
Sure. Well, I
that?
mean, obviously, the critical metals element, we're not so, basically currently, as I mentioned, the copper hasn't been a big component, but that's becoming a much more significant element of our project. But in terms of we're in the EU. They're looking for all these metals. We're in Portugal, which is actually has a pretty depressed economy compared to most other countries within the EU. They're looking for development. We're in an area of Portugal, which is about 45 minutes southeast, excuse me, of Lisbon.
Yep.
And basically, we're in the middle of Lundin's Neves Corvo mine and another mine called the Almina's Aljustrel mine, where they probably are the two richest kind of areas in southern Portugal. Our area has a population of about 7,000 people. They're having difficulty retaining their youth because basically all the youth are leaving because they can't get jobs or whatever. So again, our area sees the wealth that's being created 45 minutes away at these different areas. And so they want us to be there. So there's a very strong encouragement for us to be there by the local community, by the federal government as well. We've been actually given the status of project of national interest, which means that in order to get that, one, you have to have the support of the local communities. Two, the government has to consider your project. It will be a viable project. You still have to meet all the requirements of the law, but at the same point, they accelerate your project. And so we're very excited. I mean, it's a wonderful outcome for us.
Yeah, absolutely. Excellent. And just keeping on that sort of strategic, but also ESG lens that this project can lend itself to, you've hired a carbon neutrality consultant. Talk us about some of the program and what the intention is there.
Well, basically, we hired Synergy. They're one of the leading components of ESG in the world, and our objective has always been, and it will be, to be as low a carbon footprint, if not a zero carbon footprint, as we can. Basically, the nice thing is that there's hydro in our area, so that's a very it's a very low impact form of electricity. On top of that, we're looking at solar. We're also looking at electric machinery, and we're looking at our whole supply chain to have as minimal to minimist carbon footprint as possible. And so we're starting that early, and we'll live to that. We see the nice thing about our project is we're in a community that have graciously allowed us to come into their community, but at the same point, aside from a sign on sign on a farmland, and a few trucks coming in on a daily basis, they probably won't even know we're there, which is the beauty of this place. We are in a farmland which is surrounded by trees, and so really it's an area that people won't even see the mine. Unlike if you're looking at Neves Corvo, which you can see, you can drive into almost. We're going to be a very quiet and secluded mine.
Yeah, well, low impact and ESG conscious are very critical things, I think, especially for a junior miner to be taking on fairly early in its project life cycle, and of course, very encouraging things for investors to be seeing.
For sure. I mean, listen, we've always, we're a team of builders. We've started 3 or 4 projects from scratch. The local community has always been one of our priorities, to make sure that they're well looked after and that we're respectful of their for their environment.
Yep. Excellent. Well, Mark, thanks very much for the update. It's a really interesting start to the year with so much going on. We'd love to catch up again on Assay TV, maybe near March, and the PFS update around then as well. So thanks for taking time to catch up with us today.
Adam, thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate it. Be well.
Cheers.